Taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% be part of society? And I have made it on my own in this world. Will not take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna stop the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna stop the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Come on. Yes, what's happening, people? It is Political Unmuted. My name is Dan Lewis, and we have got the full house in tonight. Obviously, I am in place of John, who is off on sad circumstances, but there's mad love all around you, brethren. All the energy, all the good energy and that. And I'm sure you're probably watching. So Wagwan, I'm keeping the seat warm for you till you get back and get live again. In the house tonight, who have we got? We've got, I don't know what order it goes on your screen because I can see it here. So I'm going to go in my order. We got to my left, Paul Daly. What's happening, G?
Yeah, not much.
And then below me down here, I think the comments are below me, but is Stuart. What's happening, Stu?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, man. What's happening? And obviously down there, that way. No, that way. Oh, I'm confused now. But we got Jane. Jane is here. What's happening, Jane?
Hi, everyone. Far too much is happening. I don't know where Paul's been. There's too much stuff at the moment.
There's too much stuff, just too much stuff. Stop all of the stuff, everyone, and just stop it all. And let's everyone sit down and watch some Encanto and sing lovely songs. Anyway, and then at the very bottom there, but by no means the very least in any way at all, it is the one, the only, the never ever replaceable Samantha Townsend. Well, one with a bad man thing, yo.
Hello.
Well, hello. How are you? You okay?
Yes.
Brilliant. Fantastic. All right, let's get into the show. Big up everyone. It's been a long week. It's been a lot's gone on. They're letting in some refugees, but keeping other ones in detention centers. MPs are continuing to claim for their gas and energy bills and all of that, while the rest of you are getting a £200 loan from Rishi Sunak to deal with the increasing £1,000 a year to your energy bills. It's all right, isn't it? They claim thousands, yours goes up by 1,000. Do you get how it works? In the rest of the world, well, things continue to roll along. And here we are on a Tuesday night, living a vida socialism. No, it didn't work. I tried it, but I'm too high. I was going to make it rhyme, but, you know, I need to stop smoking before I go live on air. It's crazy. Anyway, what's first up, Paul? Where do we go to first? Is it...
Moment of the week.
Yeah, moment of the week. Oh, my days. I'm going to do my one last then. Paul, what was your moment of the week? Actually, go backwards. Sam, it's not backwards, just from the other way. Sam, tell me.
Shall I do the jingle as well? Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, I forgot. My bad. Do the jingle, bro.
No worries.
Fab, yeah, seamless. Just this is the high quality you can expect from this show. Tim in the comments does mention that I'm co-hosting a public meeting on the situation. Look at me getting all meeting because you're all like not using G's. A meeting on the situation in Ukraine. Now I'm going blurry. Tomorrow at Bishop Auckland Methodist Church. There we go. At 7. So if you're around, please come. But my moment of the week is I'm really proud of myself because I stuck up for myself today. Somebody called me a parasite on email before giving me a list of jobs to do, and I asked him to correct his behaviour and he didn't, so I blocked him. So I'm proud of myself.
That's deep, you know. People are deep. Are you okay? I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Thank you. Yeah. It obviously people are getting the council tax bills at the moment, and I guess he thought that all the council tax was going to me personally. It was a bit. You know, these things, you're just doing your job, going through your emails, you know, chasing things up, and then something like that jumps up. But so it's not nice. But I have made it so he can't contact me again. So there we go.
I'm not going to repeat what Julie said because this is being recorded. But check out Julie's comment. A female can read it. I don't want to read it out. But it's all about inboxes and jokes. I like that, people. But I'm glad you're all right, Samantha.
Okay.
That made me sad to hear that, but I'm glad you're all right. Moving on, let's see. What was your moment of the week, Jane?
So my moment of the week was a sad moment of the week, and Channel 4's got a documentary they've just brought out about the Jeremy Kyle show, and I was watching that, and it was so horrible. And I should probably just say they did speak to the makers of the Jeremy Kyle show and Jeremy Kyle, and they denied that the claims made about them are true, and they feel that there's the wrong perspective on it. But watching the show, it was so sad, and I couldn't help feeling a bit of collective responsibility, because I do remember seeing the show when I was younger, and I remember feeling uncomfortable about some of the things that went on it, and feeling that there were people who were potentially very vulnerable, and that the way they were being treated and, the way the conversation was being steered was very damaging for them, for themselves and for their lives and their futures. And I have to say that when I heard there'd been suicide in relation to it, or suicides allegedly, it didn't surprise me. I didn't do anything about that. Not that it's all about me, but I didn't even write a letter to ITV saying this isn't great, and I didn't have Twitter, I didn't have social media then, but I don't know, just struck me the way collectively as a society that I don't think I could have been the only person who must have realised that that wasn't quite right, and how we somehow just accept these things. This is how it is, and there's nothing I can do about it. So, you know, where you'd think that our collective like reaction would be to say, this is terrible, how can we stop it? But we kind of go, oh, and just switch off. You know, I stopped watching it because it wasn't very nice, and I feel a bit rubbish about that now. But I mean, not like I say, it's not all about me, but I don't know. It just made me think about how we do things.
I hear what you mean. I hear what you mean. Sometimes it's like we're looking through the window on some of these things. The TV screen is just a window when actually we've got to remember there's real people. I suppose that's similar to Sam's experience in that person was just looking through the window thinking, you're parasite, when really they forgot that there's another human the other side of that. And too often that happens in this world, isn't it? We forget real people are there. Well, I hope you're feeling better now, though. You know, it's always learning opportunities to be able to move on and that. You get me?
Yeah, I'm all right. So yeah, maybe I'll be a better person for that.
Good energy and all them tier. On to being real, the realist of the realist. It's Stewie Stu McStew Wagwan G. What's the moment of the week for you?
I had a complete brain fart. Myself and Sam, we went to some public speaking training, and we were asked to speak about other people on our table, our little group. So I'm stood up speaking, and I forget the first person I've talked to's name, and she's staring into my soul. I could tell you everything else that she said, you know, where she was born, how she grew up, every detail, but I forgot her name. Totally went blank. And I was like in a room of people that I wanted to look relatively, you know, capable in front of. And it'll never happen again, I'm told, which is why I've not forgotten the name Melanie ever since. I'll take that to my grave. It'll be, you know, burned into my brain for the rest of my life.
No, Leanne, I get what you mean, Leanne. Yeah. So, Sarah, how was your? I get you. No, I tried to make you smile, but it didn't work.
I'm too tired for that.
Oh, Stuart, do you know what? I've been in a similar thing where like they do lots of like where you're sitting there talking to people and you have to pick up on things they say and stuff. And listen, that's why you notice like do you remember people used to take the mick out of Ed Miliband for it, but every time he asked a question, he'd go, "What's your name? What's your name? Thanks, Leanne. Thanks. Great question, Leanne." And he'd write it down and he'd say their name as well. And that's a way to try and remember people's names so that when you come back to them with the question, with their answers, you say their names during the answer and it feels a lot more personable.
Pen and paper was banned. I would have killed for a pen and paper right there. I would have cut somebody's guts out if I thought I could have wrote with the blood.
Oh my days. Paul, moment of the week, brother.
Mine's gonna be just I normally go really big picture, so I'm going really small picture today. This is something we're doing in our local community, so I've been made vice chair of something called Making Wingate Welfare Park Wonderful, which is a group where we're going for loads of money to try and improve the local facilities for people so we can do something. So we're going to try and build things like maybe a sports pavilion. We're going to improve the play facilities down there. We're going to try and have a cafe, do all sorts of things. These are the things we would like to do by because I'm elected onto the parish council, which is only small scale stuff, but it's the kind of thing that we would like to do there. But the money just isn't available for those things. And a lot of these things, it's kind of like you have to go and you have to do a bid to Asda or something, and then Asda will provide you the money. So it looks like capitalism's really, really good. But actually, if they just paid the taxes directly, it's probably a lot less than they would have paid in tax. But you know, we've got to try and work within the system that we have in order to do it, and we've got some really, really brilliant people involved with that. So, kind of exciting to be involved in something where you're actually hopefully going to change a few lives for the better in a really fun way. Because I think we get bogged down in all the awful things that are going on, and we have to try and address those things. But at the same time, we're going to have some. Well, there's bread, and we can get people the bread, and we need to get people the roses too, don't we? And try and have people enjoying their life. So yeah, that's me.
Give them bread, give them roses. Me love that, man. Hey, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. And big up Leanne in the comments. Seeing my gym tank buddies smashing it. Come on, big up the gym tank people. It's all about that healthy life and everything. Yeah, that's lovely, Paul. I'm glad to see you doing that. I got involved in a community campaign once. We tried to save a pub. I know. It didn't work out in the end, but you know, we brought people together. So that's the good energy you get out of it. Do you know what I mean? My moment of the week, a nice little quick one to round us up at this section of the night. Basically, a lot of you might know I'm involved with the World Transforms, which is a festival that runs alongside the Labour Party conference. It's not a part of it. And it's all about music, politics, arts, culture, good food, good people, good vibes, and dancing. This year it's going to be in Liverpool, which is where I live. So we had some of the staff team up to meet some people from Liverpool, get involved in like some local stuff that's going on, and have some food and have a good night out and see a few venues. So that was really good. That was my moment of the week. I'm really excited, and I used it as an opportunity to plug the festival that I volunteer for. So it's all good vibes all around. Dano. Samantha, was there any good ones you picked up from the comments, by the way?
We're just talking about different times in which we'd forgotten people's names. I think I've got the best one because I've had parents' evenings where I'd forgotten the name of the child that I was talking about. Apparently Neil says he forgot the name of somebody while he was on a date once. I think we're all really proud of Neil that he got a date. Well done, try again. I'm just being mean. Tim says, Paul, when you've got a minute, let him know if he can help you with your project, because he's got some ideas.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'll be in touch. I noticed Tim was saying a couple of things as well. Apparently, I was brought up again. Tim keeps on telling me I'm brought up in his conversations, which is kind of good in a lot of ways, because obviously, you know, I'm making some waves. I hope it's in a positive way. He also mentioned that he sees that Chelsea is scared to play the mighty Borough. And I like this. Chelsea have tried to get the game for the FA Cup. I think it's the FA Cup. Played behind closed doors. Because they think it's unfair that I think everyone wants Chelsea to lose at the minute, and like, you know, and there'll be Ukraine flags in the crowd, and I think they're trying to get it cancelled for that reason. Well, play behind closed doors for that reason. And it's like, why would we help you, Chelsea? You know, why should you get any special treatment? You know, but maybe more on that later.
Oh my days. It is certainly the topic of conversation. Oh my days. Talking of topics, pattern that. Come on. Go for it, Paul.
Now it's time for the big story.
Love that. We nearly got there. Considering we didn't plan it, I think we did good. All right, the big story. Whose is the big story? Is this yours, Paul, or was it Sam?
I was going to lead off. Yeah, I'll be brief. So the big story is that apparently, because there's going to be this energy crisis, which there definitely wasn't going to be any kind of cost of living crisis before the war in Ukraine. But now that there is going to be a war in Ukraine, there's going to be inexplicable and totally unforeseen 6% inflation and energy prices going through the roof. Of course, that was going to happen anyway. But apparently, in order to try and stabilize the prices of fuel, Mr. Johnson has been to Saudi Arabia to see if he can get fuel from them instead of the murderous Russian regime. He'd rather get it from the murderous Saudi Arabian regime. Saudi Arabia, that they executed 81 people at the weekend. That's the story, isn't it?
Only. You forgot only.
Only. So, you know, that's the topic of the day, isn't it? Why are some horrendous, murderous regimes better than others? Why are we happy to trade with Saudi Arabia and not with Russia? But the other thing is the whole concept of the energy crisis and the fact that the world is burning and, you know, fossil fuels are bad and unsustainable. We've known this for what, like 50 years now? It's not a surprise. It's not a new thing. And we have had the opportunity to invest in different solutions. And yes, it's probably going to be a mixture of solutions, but they don't have to come from Russia. In the northeast of England here, we are literally sat atop mine water, geothermal, which could heat most of our homes. For obviously the installation costs, but the actual heat would then be free. We can make the laws so that people can share solar energy between houses and within communities, but the government choose not to introduce those laws. So it's just so frustrating that it's like, this is the only choice possible, but there are actually many other choices possible than buying oil from Saudi Arabia, but that's the choice that this government seemed to want to make. Paul?
Yeah. So
while Paul gathers his thoughts, right, I'm going to add in something, just a little fact. Last year, I'm trying to remember the figure. I'm terrible with figures. I think you lot know I used to work in a bank. So the chair of the like fraternity of oil creators or oil industry companies in the Middle East, they had like a meeting and they agreed it was something like 64 million more barrels of oil would be created like every month out of the Middle East. So that, like, basically what I'm saying is the people who are in charge of how much oil they pull out of the grounds, they've decided they're going to up it a big amount. They're pulling the gear stick right back on the amount of oil. This works perfectly into their hands. It's nearly as if they knew. Go on, Paul.
Yeah, I think my angle on this is always to have a look at why certain regimes are our friends and our allies, and other regimes are our enemies. So I've spoken to a few people about this kind of thing. I've mentioned Yemen a fair bit this week to people that I know, and some people really, I don't know if it's deliberate, I don't know if it's a weird reaction to it, but they think by me bringing up, like, trying to make an equivalence between what's going on in Yemen and what's going on in Ukraine, that I'm somehow belittling what's going on in Ukraine, which it shocks me, to be honest, because I'm very anti-war. I think it's awful what's going on in the Ukraine. Like, I want that war to be over right now. That's so obvious, and anyone who knows me knows that's so obvious. But the greatest humanitarian crisis of the 21st century has been going on for 7 years in Yemen, and it has been entirely the Saudi Arabians picking on a much, much weaker country and just bombing them constantly from the air. You talk about a no-fly zone in Ukraine. A no-fly zone in Ukraine possibly could have led to all sorts of different things. Could have led to having to shoot down Russian planes. Could have led to all sorts of things that would escalate the crisis. I can understand the argument against it. But in Yemen, there should be a no-fly zone, because the only people flying over Yemen are the Saudis trying to bomb them. And they've used also 230,000 deaths. 230,000. I don't know how many deaths are in Ukraine yet, but it's nowhere near on that scale. We're seeing people dying of malnutrition because the infrastructure is absolutely destroyed. We're seeing people dying of their injuries from being bombed. It is utterly, utterly horrific. And the only difference I can really see is, well, there are two differences. One, people from Yemen are brown, generally. And I think there's a form of racism with this, where one thing matters, or maybe it's because it's further away. I don't really know what people are in people's thoughts. But the other thing is, as well, is we as a country are providing them with weapons, and we are providing them with strategic support. We are providing them with information in order to help their targeting systems, if I understand that correctly. For me, there's very little we can do to stop Russia from doing what it's doing. But we could, today, make a choice not to support Saudi Arabia's bombing campaign. Now, given that Mohammed bin Salman, the leader, the king of Saudi Arabia, asked Boris Johnson to intervene in the buy-in of Newcastle United, we're back to football here because the Premier League found them not fit and proper owners. Given that Roman Abramovich has been stripped of having Chelsea, but Boris Johnson stepped in to allow them to buy Newcastle United, what's going on here? Where's the like Roman Abramovich is loosely associated with Putin. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think get rid of all the billionaire assets, seize the billionaires' assets. I'm into that, right? I'm massively into that. But I don't understand why Abramovich gets this treatment, but the Saudi government get positive treatment when they are homophobic, when they are pushing, it's been reported that they're pushing gay people off the top of buildings, they're executing people, they're doing mass executions, they are bombing Yemen, and in what's described by the UN as the worst humanitarian crisis of the 21st century. What's going on here? Why are we not stepping in? Now, Boris Johnson is going over there to try and make some sort of deal for oil, but for the first time ever, he's not having any journalists travel with him, or it might be just one select journalist. Normally teams of journalists will go. And he said something like, we're not afraid to bring up human rights violations with our allies. What are people doing human rights violations doing being our allies? Why we're allying with these people? And I think we really, really need to look at what we can do as a country. If as a country we made a decision not to get involved with this whatsoever and not to help, maybe we could save some lives right now. But we can't do that in Ukraine yet. We can help with humanitarian efforts, but we could have a huge impact on Saudi if we just said, stop bombing people for no reason. I don't even know what it's over. I don't even know what the war's over in Yemen, and I've not had it properly explained to me by anyone, despite the fact I've tried to seek out that knowledge. That's me
I hear
done.
you, man.
I've just got a
I
little
hear
bit.
you.
Yeah.
Bruv, it was passions, and it's right. It's right. I agree with you. Did Stuart or Jane, did you guys want to jump in on this?
I'll jump in. Because even if you're not 100% behind a green economy, a greener, brighter future, and even if you discount, how awful Saudi Arabia is, Boris Johnson and his team have come out on record of saying, we knew what was going to happen in the Ukraine. This was, the outcome that we foresaw for a long time. They're on the record as saying that this was the outcome that they foresaw. Why didn't this meeting to go seek alternatives take place earlier? Why now? Why are we, if we're considering that, being reliant on Russian oil is a national security risk, why are we now putting our national security in the hands of another dictatorial regime? Why are we thus lowering our influence in the region with regards to, making positive changes with regard, human rights violations? We will have less power if we are dependent on something that they can turn off for us. There's no political will to protect British interests with regards to fuel, energy, unless it's put in the hands of a foreign nation. That's just across the board, no matter, generally which way you believe in politically. That's just not common sense.
I'm with you. Yeah, Jane, what are you saying?
Yeah, absolutely. But now is the time that we need to be investing in green energy and green infrastructure. It's already too late, but not too late in the sense of don't bother. We're well behind. We need to do it now. We don't need to be writing stupid articles about why young people, on top of being homeless for their whole lives and paying back a £50,000 student loan, should pay extra to make up for the crisis. We just need to invest in the green energy. We need that Green New Deal with those good jobs. There's so many benefits. There's just no reason not to do it. But instead, we're going cap in hand to a murderous dictatorship to make ourselves beholden to them for such a fundamental thing that we need as a country. It's absolute madness. And I just can't get my head around why on earth we would be doing that.
100, man. I think from the comments that I've been able to catch as well, I think Sam will correct me, but overall, people are generally in agreement with you guys on this one. What are you saying, Sam? What's the comment saying?
Yeah, I mean, Mary says the UK would shake hands with the devil for money. Amelia says Great Britain is not so great. We're behind in this country. And Jackie saying similar to what's just been said there, that we're not learning from the mistake, which is that energy security is national security. So if we're not gonna, and it's the same with steel, by the way, if we don't have control over our own steel production, then we don't have control over our own weapons production if we are in a war situation. So we really, and food, let's not forget food, that's kind of important, you know. And what have we done to our farmers over the last 6 years? You know, we've driven them out of business. So we really need to look at those things seriously. Like Jen says, you can't keep putting this off forever just because it might be politically difficult for you to invest in renewables. It needs to happen now, because it hasn't happened before.
It's mad, you know. There was this guy about, where are we now? 22, so 2-3 years ago, and he was talking about like kind of investing in the UK in things like energy, creating jobs, well-paid jobs that were good for the environment, investing in homegrown food, homegrown jobs, like manufacturing, bringing steel back to the UK, protecting the steel place that got sold to a Chinese company, or was it the Chinese government? I can't remember. But yeah, and he was talking about all this kind of stuff, but they apparently he was like some balmy communist or something. Like I quite like communism. So, but yeah, he was like this balmy communist, and they made him out like he was in bed with Putin. And it's mad because like he's not into gas, he's not into oil. So why would he be mates with Putin? Do you know what I mean? And then they made out that like he was mates with like the Saudi kings and stuff, but he was like in support of not having them visit the UK when they had the red carpet rolled out for them in London, as if they were our royal family. Not that we need a royal family, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened. They just made out like he was an idiot or something. But he was talking about all the things you guys have just been talking about in terms of war and looking after ourselves. Amelia, Corbyn. Yeah, Corbyn. That's the guy. What was his name? James Corbyn. James Corbyn. That was the guy. Jeremy. I forgot about that guy. He spoke about all of that stuff. It's mad. Anyway, it took me a while to get there, but I got there. Anyway, my opinion on all of this, yeah, like honestly, it just I suppose I'm where Paul's at really in terms of like the fucking hypocrisy of all of it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just, and it stinks. And off of that, one thing I've found slightly frustrating from people that I've spoken to is that a lot of people, when you do the comparison, I suppose, between what's going on in terms of Russia and Saudi, people are like, oh yeah, but it's like, no, there's no but to it. I'm telling you facts. I'm like, yeah, but when you put it like that, and I'm like, no, I'm not putting it in a certain way. I'm giving you facts. Don't worry, Neil. Palestine's gonna get mentioned tonight, definitely. Like it's purely on the minds. But when you are talking facts, people, they're like, but you're twisting it, aren't you? You're making it your own narrative. And it's like, no, this is actually happening. We are actually going to Saudi Arabia to do a deal for oil while they are beheading people or slaughtering people. I don't know. They're slaughtering people. That's the word that's been used. But at the same time, it's like we do it totally differently. So you're 100%, I 100% agree with you. Next up, guys, is the freedom and fairness. That's what I've got written down on my title. And I think, is it Jane?
Yes, thank you.
Jane is bringing the freedom and fairness.
I am, but first I just wanted to mention Neil's comment in the chat. He asked why none of us mentioned Palestine. I just wanted to assure you, Neil, that it wasn't intentional. I think that's something that was quite high on our minds as well there. So obviously what's happening in Palestine is disgusting as well. So
on that note, do you mind if I just mention one thing that we're not going to mention through the show? So a new law has been passed about the reuniting of families in Israel, and it is being considered to be a greater level of apartheid than they would have even done in South Africa. They tried to put this through the South African law courts, and they decided, no, this is too sectarian, too apartheid for us. And yet it's passed in Israel, and it's going to mean that like families can't be reunited, and also means that you are a second class citizen if you are other than Jewish in Israel, which I don't understand how anyone could come to the conclusion that that is anything other than a form of racism, where one group of people is favoured over others. And I think we need to highlight those things as well. It's absolutely essential that we challenge absolutely everyone on all these things. So yeah, solidarity with the people of Palestine and the people of Israel who would much rather have a non-racist government.
Definitely. Go ahead, Shane.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Right, so yesterday the Supreme Court, the UK Supreme Court, has decided that Julian Assange's application to appeal his extradition to the US has been refused. So back in January 2021, a judge had ruled that Julian should not be extradited to the US because it would be potentially harmful to his life. The High Court in the UK then quashed that verdict, or cancelled it. I'm not sure what the right word is. A few months back in December, and Julian launched an appeal. Today, the Supreme Court has said no, they're not going to hear the appeal. So that means that the assurances given by the US that they will not, keep him in conditions that might harm his life, those won't be scrutinised. So what they've said, bearing in mind that whistleblowers from the CIA have come forward now and given evidence that the CIA plotted to kidnap and murder Julian just a few years ago, we're now saying it's safe to hand him over to those people because they've said they won't do anything to him that might endanger him unless he does something they don't like saying that it was quite nasty of them to plot to murder him. That would not be on, really. So that's fine, and we think that's okay at the Supreme Court. The decision now sits with Priti Patel ultimately. So she's going to decide what happens there. So in America, should he be extradited, he will face 175 years in prison, although these people who did plot to murder him, allegedly, have assured us that he'll probably only get 5 or 6 years. And this is basically for espionage charges. And he's facing these espionage and hacking charges because he published evidence that the US government had committed human rights violations, killing tens of thousands of innocent people, committed torture, bombed children, had death squads, murdered Reuters journalists, bribed foreign officials, bullied less powerful countries to harm their own citizens, and corruption of allied nations' judicial inquiries into US wrongdoing. So I don't know if it's worth thinking about how many of these things Putin's doing at the moment for which we'd quite like to destroy his country. And that's not to say that what Putin's doing isn't evil and wrong to the people of Ukraine, but it's worth thinking about the fact that other so-called civilized countries are doing things just as nasty. And I don't want this to happen to anyone. I don't want it to happen in people in Ukraine, but I also don't want it to happen to other countries at the hands of governments like the US. There's also the fact that a key witness for the CIA has in the meantime admitted that he fabricated key allegations in his statement in return for immunity, but nonetheless they are still going ahead with this. So I wanted to mention too, because I was reading the BBC article, and the BBC, like a lot of other mainstream media in this country, has been reasonably quiet over the years about what's happening with Julian Assange. And I was quite surprised to see that they did, note the fact that amongst the things that he'd revealed was the fact that the US military had killed. They put hundreds of civilians in Afghanistan and noted that it was during a war, which I thought was an interesting way to have worded it. And they put that he'd revealed that 66,000 civilians were killed by Iraqi forces and that prisoners were tortured by Iraqi forces in the Iraq War, which I thought was also interesting because I would have read that as meaning it was the Iraq soldiers and not the US. But then what I thought was more interesting was that reading on in that article, they had a paragraph on the international arrest warrant against Julian from Sweden some years back, which they said for a sexual offence allegations. And they pointed out that the Swedish authorities had wanted to question him over a rape and molestation, but that Julian had said both encounters were entirely consensual. So I thought this was an interesting way to phrase this, because I say what actually happened. I don't know what happened, but I do know that both women's statements were altered by the police, which should not happen. And one woman refused to sign her statement before leaving the police station because it had been altered to the extent that she said it did not say what she was alleging against Julian. So I thought that, I thought the way that the BBC had reported that was quite interesting, given those facts. There were never actually charges against Julian, despite the police having changed both women's statements. There were never actually charges brought, although they did obviously issue an arrest warrant. So yeah, that's the facts about Julian Assange. He's been given permission to marry his fiancée Stella on the 23rd of March in Belmarsh Prison, where he's being held at the moment. And on Stella's Twitter feed, she's looking for ideas from people of things they can do to publicise the wedding to raise awareness about Julian. So that's Julian. I wanted to speak to you about someone called Raif Badawi, but I don't know if we wanted to speak about Julian first or go on to that as well at the same time.
You know what? You gave us some facts. Like, I didn't know some of that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I knew it, but like I didn't know it. Do you know what I mean? It was like,
thank you.
That was tight. That was tight. Like, I learned a lot there. Are you guys feeling educated?
Yeah, we had a great show on this before that Jane organised, and it was one of the few that I haven't been on, and I sat and listened to it in the gym one time. And it was absolutely brilliant. So if anyone wants that, we do have a show on Socialist Night Live all about that. But yeah, Jane's really summarised it brilliantly there. And it's extremely worrying what's going on. And given what you said about the freedom of the press as well, and given this is all about, everyone should be up in arms about this. Every journalist should be up in arms in this. And it's really interesting that you've got like the likes of Peter Auburn, who is a right-wing journalist, who is constantly coming out against this narrative. And I think everyone thinks that the right-wing journalists have this integrity about them that he has as a right-wing journalist who entirely politically disagrees with us. But he's got integrity, and that doesn't seem to be universal. I think a lot of newspapers at the moment, given Lebedev, who owned a lot of the newspapers and supported Boris Johnson, which we'll probably talk about in the Ukraine section, and then the BBC photoshopping Russian hats onto Corbyn while ignoring Tory donors, and now all of a sudden they're interested in Russian Tory donors. It's an absolute mess. But if journalists should be fearing for their lives here, because that was some of the best journalism that was done, certainly ever by WikiLeaks, and the fact that he can be tried for espionage in a country to which he is not, in which he is not a citizen, and extradited to them. He's not an American citizen. He's nothing to do with them. He owes them nothing. It wasn't espionage. He didn't do anything towards his own country. So if someone can be extradited to face charges in a country in which they couldn't possibly have done the charge that they're trying to criminalize them for, then journalism is in a very, very worrying state, and it could be literally any of us if we find something interesting out and come out with it.
I hear you, man. Have I dropped out?
No,
I'm
just
still in.
frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen.
You're still here.
It's calm. I got worried there. What are we saying, Stewie or Sam?
I wasn't saying anything. I'm just the whole Assange thing. I just don't have enough space in my brain to keep it all in, and every time somebody talks about it, they bring up new things that I never even considered. It's just like you said. It's a bit of a worry that that we're letting somebody go somewhere that, you know, is probably not safe. And you know, if there are the charges to be brought, they can be brought here. Surely, I don't know enough about it, so I'm going to keep quiet.
I hear you. Yeah, it's a difficult one because I think for a lot of people, it's very difficult to garner the facts, which is a bit of like what you've covered there, obviously, Paul. Like a lot of people, they will give their opinion on these things. And I think that's why a lot of what you said, Jane, for me was like, oh, okay, I've heard that before, but I thought that was someone's opinion. I didn't realize that was facts. You know what I mean? The other way around. So it is difficult. Yeah. How about you, Stu? You got anything on this one?
It's one of those things where the way the media presents things, they can make it dead interesting if it's something that, you know, they really want to get out there, or they can make it really long and hard and complex to understand, and people will turn off and not be interested. And certainly with regards to mainstream media, there's zero trust there anymore, is there? You know, it's kind of, it's killed off the whole idea that we kind of submitted to smarter people. You know, the age of the intellectuals kind of died. The age of the expert has gone the way of the dodo. And it just feeds into this whole thing where conspiracy theories are more interesting and get on the news more than facts do.
What's the point in facts, eh?
Yeah.
Do you know, I remember one time I was in a cab, right? And it's mad because Liverpool's such a lovely open place, but we end up with the maddest taxi drivers. Not all of them. I hear you, not all taxi drivers. Anyway, I just get the maddest taxi drivers. And this guy, I'm on the way into town and it's about a 20-minute drive. There's probably some traffic, so maybe longer. And he's ramming on about how he doesn't like this and he doesn't like that. And he gets on to Muslims and he spends a long time talking about how he's got Muslim mates that think Islam is bad and how he thinks Islam is bad and all of this stuff. And I'm like, and then I'm saying to him, like, he's talking about immigration. And I'm like, well, you're wrong. And he's like, but where did you get that from? And I'm like, it's facts. That's the actual fact. It's not where did I get it from. It's a fact. It's a thing. It's because something has happened. It is real. And he's like, but it's your facts. It's not my facts. And I was like, I don't get ya. And he went, exactly. And I was like, what? And he's like, because it's not my facts. You're not going to get me. And I'm like, what? No, I don't. There was nowhere I could go. Anyway, after this whole time of him ranting about how much he hates Muslims, I was turning up at an event in front of the Three Graces on the Pierheads, the Liver building and that. And he dropped me off where I think there was around 10,000 Muslim people coming together with around 5,000 people from the local community to celebrate Ramadan and break bread together as the sun set and do prayers. So it was a really beautiful moment in the face of one racist, ugly, facts-denying taxi driver. So there's a lovely little moment there for you guys to think about while I take us on to the next subject.
Dan, sorry.
Go on. Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to speak about Raif Badawi whilst we're on this.
Oh, go for it.
Sorry. So Raif Badawi, he's a Saudi blogger and he had a blog about democracy and human rights. So in 2014, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison in Saudi Arabia and 1,000 lashes. So publicly flogged 50 times per week for 20 weeks. So he's served his 10 years in prison. He's just been released. He didn't get an early release. And he's under a 10-year travel ban. His wife and 3 children now live in Canada. So he served his 10 years, he's been publicly flogged, and now he faces another 10 years in Saudi Arabia, or separated from his wife and his 3 children. So I just wanted to mention that, obviously. I mean, we're speaking about Saudi Arabia in this show, and we've not touched on what happened to Jamal Khashoggi, which was absolutely horrific. Went into the, I think it was the Saudi consulate in Turkey, under the premise of getting a certificate to allow him to marry his fiancée. He was living in the US, and he was murdered and dismembered by people linked to the Saudi state, and there's been investigations by the UN, and I think it's in the New York Times and Washington Post, which both concluded that the very top of the Saudi state was involved in that. So I just thought, whilst we're talking about press freedom, I just wanted to raise this and the things that are still happening there, and whether this is maybe something also we want to think about when we do business with a country like Saudi Arabia, rather than building some wind turbines. I think Dan's frozen out.
He's back.
Do you know what? I've been moving stuff around and I knew this was going to happen. I was like, all right, I'll set everything up and I'll leave it absolutely still so it won't affect. And do you know what I just did? I just tapped my laptop and everything went, no, we're going to die quickly. I'm so sorry. I only missed the end of what you were saying there, though. Like, I've been gone for about less than 20 seconds. I was going to ask you, Jane, I'm sorry, I missed where you're up to, obviously. But if there's a link, like, where we can there's actions we can take and stuff to try and help.
So Reporters Without Borders have been doing a lot on this. I know that they are. I think they're raising funds at the moment for reporters in the Ukraine. I'm not sure if there's anything they're doing for Rife, but I'll have a look and see if there must be some petitions out there. So I'll find that and put the link up.
Wicked. Thank you so much, Jane. Another one for people to check out. I don't know if Samantha, you've got the link to this, but I can share it. I just want to do a little shout out for the Canary, because I am fully aware that Socialist Think Tank, let me send that. There you go, Samantha. Socialist Think Tank are members of the Media Fund, or the Media Association. Is it called now?
IMA, isn't it?
IMA, that's it. The
Independent Media Association.
That's the one, yeah. Used to be the Media Fund. But yeah, the Independent Media Association, who are basically a collective of independent media organizations, like Socialist Think Tank, Squawk Box, I think the White Pube are involved. You've got a wide range of different media groups that are involved. One of them being the Canary, who launched an Amplify mentoring program last year. It was December 2021, and basically their plan was to give young working class people hands-on experience in independent media. And basically they're just announcing that the project has gone through, it's run, and they're going to be sharing some of those stories that have been written by young people, ages, I think it was 16 to 21, I think was the age group. And they're going to be looking at some of the work they've been doing. So go check out the Canary. Big up Steve Topple, who was recently presenting this show, wasn't he? Yeah, I remember that one. So yeah, definitely go check out what the Canary are up to on that one. That was my little plug on the back of that. Was you able to share that link, Sam?
Yes, I did. Fantastic.
You're a legend.
I also shared a link to the Independent Media Association a little bit further up. Do go and have a click around. Last time we were on, we talked about them, and then I click around and I subscribed to Red Pepper magazine just like because I could. And I've just clicked on again, and I've gone and joined some mailing lists and things. So those are very little things you can do. Mailing lists, liking Facebook pages and Twitters doesn't cost you anything, does it? And it just helps you push those messages a little bit further.
Samantha, you genuinely have like some of the best energy in the world.
I like the Prisma as well. The Prisma are great. We've had people on there we had Juan from the Prisma on one of our shows before, and they do like international news, and it's all done from the viewpoint of refugees and immigrants and things like that. So it's really, really good. And Milk the Cow's really good at that. I'm loving listening to Milk the Cow podcast as well. That's been great lately. So check those out too.
Yes. Big up the Independent Media Association and the Canary. Done though. Right. I don't think we've got a lot of time left for the last bit, but I want to make sure we get onto it because it's important, right?
Yeah.
Which is what's happened this week. Do we have a theme for what's happened this week?
Yeah. Well, we've got one more jingle if you want. We can do another jingle, which is this one.
So, who's giving us a roundup of what's going on this week?
This is the Ukraine, isn't it? Ukraine situation.
Yep.
Yeah, do you want to go, Stuart, or shall I go? You go, Stuart.
Mine will be, there's a war, there's awful things, tragedies. People are trying to help. Governments are not trying to help as much as they could. It's, terrifying, sad, miserable. People are very consciously aware that, what war kind of means now. That it's kind of, it's in the back door of Europe. But, like, war's been going on for a long time. This isn't the only war. And, this kind of feeling and energy needs to be picked up upon, because other people in the world are feeling this in their own back gardens. I'm just very sad. I was asked by a friend, and he said, "Do you think there'll be any justice for Putin?" And he wanted me to say that we'll see him in court one day, being done for war crimes, and I don't have an answer. They just want an end to this, don't they? It can't come soon enough.
Yeah, it can't come soon enough. A war to this in Ukraine, and like just all over, like Paul was saying before, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the worry for me is we've got this really childish narrative, haven't we? Of like there's a bad guy Putin, and then if Putin stopped, then somehow there can be justice because Putin can be punished. Now there can be no justice that matches what Putin has done. They launched the invasion, but remember, Putin is not one person. No one person could do this alone. He's got the infrastructure of a country that they robbed from the people. They had the interesting discussion I had this week where someone said to me, I didn't realise that Russia were capitalists. I thought they were communist." Like, well, they haven't been for a long time, and whether they were ever communist, actually, they were state capitalist, where the state owned the infrastructure, but the people had no power. Like that is not communism. That is not what communism is supposed to be. But put that aside, Russia is one of the least equal states in the world, and they gave the infrastructure to people like Roman Abramovich and Lebedev and all these people who've been very, very close to the British government, very close to Britain. They've been laundering the money here, and that structure where they need power, this constant need for more and more money, is what's driving certain things. And you can look at the Russian point of view and say they feel surrounded by NATO. Yeah, I can kind of see that because there aren't very many Russian bases based around other countries. They've pulled out of other areas of the world, so I can understand that argument. But it doesn't mean you invade somewhere. But at the same time, we're going to have a much more mature look at this about whether this constant arms sales, constant need for building more and more weapons in order to make people richer, and then creating wars in order to generate that, and also warring for energy supplies rather than having energy security in a country, whether that's a sensible way to go about the world. I don't think it is. I don't think getting rid of Putin will solve that particular problem. I don't think seeing Putin in The Hague will solve that problem. I think there's other people who are in the country who would like to see other world leaders put in The Hague for illegal wars, but it hasn't happened. It doesn't happen to big, powerful countries. It happens to smaller countries when they do something. So, we need to change. Like, look at the way the narrative has changed around, like, say, Venezuela, for example. All of a sudden, Venezuela. Oh yeah. I saw an article saying Venezuela accepts capitalism because the US have lifted sanctions on Venezuela because they're now going to buy Venezuelan oil because they were trying to cripple the country because they were trying to be more socialist. But now they're capitalists again. It's okay. They're capitalists again because they're selling us their oil because we want it now. And it's like, they're not capitalists now. So this evil country, remember the right wingers just like screaming, Venezuela! It was about like when Jeremy Corbyn was going for leader of the country. They were going, Venezuela! And now Venezuela, great, oh yeah, great Venezuela. You know, like veins popping out of their heads and things. So we need to change this utterly ridiculous, childish narrative around war, around capitalism, around helping one another. And it's really funny because you're always told that you're really, really naive if you believe that there can be a better way. Actually, this is the way things have to be. This is the way grown-ups do it. Grown-ups do it this way, you know. This is what we do. We have to go to war because we're grown-ups. It's like absolute idiocy. I am tired of it. I am so sick of it.
Reminds me of this thing. A guy said to me once, like, God rest his soul and all them thing there. Man's dead now, but he still said it. But I was like, he was talking about the nuclear argument in it, and I was like, just remove it in it. I'm all down for like everyone removing the weapons at the same time, but I'm also down for if you've got a weapon, remove it. If other people don't, that's their choice not to remove their weapons. But we'll encourage them to remove theirs like we've removed ours. I don't see the point in why we've got them. Anyway, you get my drift. He said, but Danny, if I punch you, what are you going to do? I was like, probably nothing because you're a 60-year-old bloke. It's not like I'm going to punch you back, is it? But if I wasn't a 60-year-old bloke, would you punch me back? And I'm like, to be honest, no, I don't generally just immediately punch someone back because they punched me. I kind of work out why and say, so don't do that again. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not asked. And he's like, but you'd think about punching them back, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you like the option to be able to punch back? And I'm like, I get your point. You're saying if someone strikes me with a nuke, I'll strike them with a nuke. How about if you punched me, it killed me, like a nuke would kill all of us? Would I be able to punch you back or nuke you back? No. So where is this conversation going? No war ends well. None of it. So if no one has weapons, or at least one group of people doesn't have weapons, we're starting the progress into stopping war altogether, right?
Look at the ludicrousness of the situation. Even like if you take the nuclear argument aside, which is completely bonkers, the idea that like nuking people is more sensible than not doing a genocide. Like, oh, you got to do a genocide. You've got to. Sensible people do genocides. That's the argument, isn't it? Like the people come up with. But aside from that, British weapons were being used by ISIS in Syria because it is alleged that the Saudis bought them and gave them to ISIS, and then ISIS were using those weapons to attack British soldiers in Syria. Like, this is stupid. That is utterly stupid. Don't give them the weapons. Don't sell people who are going to use weapons against you weapons. The only reason to do that is to make profit for people who sell weapons. That's the only logical reason to do that.
Do you think if we stopped making weapons, like, just stopped making weapons, there'd be less weapons in the world?
Yeah. And
we could kind of stop people, weapons getting into the hands of terrorists like Tony Blair and George Bush. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy, bruv. Or, yeah, I'm not going to continue because I could get, yeah. But you get me. And that's the whole thing. It's like war is inevitable, but it's not okay when Palestine fight back.
Yeah, with a storm.
It's do you know what I mean? Because, they haven't got British weapons handed to them. They haven't got, money funneling into them via spurious routes and stuff. Like, literally, this is old women in the street who are called terrorists. People trying to just basically keep their houses, not displaced, not killed, hospitals blown up or just toppled over, schools removed, education removed, all of that stuff just removed. These are people just defending their lives, but it's not okay. You know what I mean? It's all right if you're white, though. You can fight for yourself if you're white.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently.
There you go. There it is. By the way, big up anyone if you've logged in via my TikTok. I've been live on TikTok while we've been on live as well. So big up all the TikTok people. Sam, what's the comment saying?
Well, we've solved it. Good news.
Okay.
Good news. Between me and Neil, we've solved it, right? So he says, can we not give them those huge cotton bud things they used to use on gladiators, right? So let's give the leaders pugil sticks.
Yeah, that's right. Well done.
Yes. And then we can film it, right? And put it on the TV where they used to put Jeremy Kyle on. There we go.
The show's over. That is it, people. Good night. Neil, you've done a full set. Wasn't it Neil who had the date where you forgot the person's name?
Yes.
You've gone from forgetting someone's name on a date to solving all of our world problems this week. You're just a genius. You're bigger than Kanye right now.
Put that aside though, isn't that sort of what the Olympics is? So we can kind of come together and compete against each other in a nice way, and then go home afterwards without anyone being dead. Isn't that sort of what that's meant to be? But as soon as there's a war on, they're like, you can't come to our Olympics. And all these Russian athletes going, I hate war. When they're like, well, you can't even do anything. You can't even do your sport anymore. You can't earn a living. It's just a weird...
When you get the rare footballer or athlete who decides to be political about it, even though look at what's going on in all sports right now, as you just said as well. You know, we don't do politics. We don't stand in solidarity with a country.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Fine Celtic £100,000 for having their fans wave some Palestine flags, but then expect every single football team to wave Ukraine flags. You know that there's a false unequivalence here, I think.
Not a fan of flags, to be honest. I don't know. Let's have a quick temperature check. Stuart, flags, yay or nay?
Yeah.
I mean national flags, not flags in general. Jane?
I can take them or leave them. I'm not fussed about flags, really.
Not asked. Sam?
I'm a fan of flags. I could probably find a flag right now.
But like national flags, nationality flags. Oh, okay. Yeah. Paul?
I'm not really a flagger. I'm not a flag guy.
A flag shagger.
But yeah, I'm not in it. But if people like them, you know, whatever. I like red flags.
You're not a steer karma.
No.
So generally, the vibe it's mad. Flags invoke something about people. See, I've got a flag that says "Total Eclipse of the Sun," and it flies 7 foot above us when we're at festivals. It's brilliant. But you wouldn't catch me probably flying a national flag. You know what I mean? It's like.
I think when they're in your living room, especially if you're on a Zoom call, then they irritate me a lot, actually. Yeah, then I'd gladly not have any flags. I don't get the whole flag in your living room behind your computer thing.
I'm not going to move too far because I don't want to knock the wires, but I have got a red flag behind me. But I bought that as a cover to like a red background for something. But anyway, I think we're due a little bit of our break now, isn't it, Paul?
It is, yeah.
Look at that. I'm only 5 minutes behind, Sam.
Yeah, it's been good. So shall we have our 5-minute break and come back and deal with all those beautiful comments?
Let's do this.
All right. See you all in a couple of minutes' time.
My name is Jack Atkinson, I'm not afraid. And I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say. And around the rear we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told them I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. And around the rear we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those first, and around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today.
We're back. Come on. Listen, before we jump onto the flag thing, big up John, by the way, yeah, because we saw John in the comments. So mad love, mad good energy, respect, love, and all of that to John. And yeah, Samantha found a flag. You were right. She was right. All she had to do was turn around and there was a flag. What do you want to educate us? Flags with Samantha, like flags with Sheldon.
Absolutely, as Stuart quite rightly said. Welcome to Fun with Flags. This is the County Durham flag, which you will notice is the same colours as the Ukrainian flag. Woo! Because County Durham is the best place to live, obviously. So yeah. This has, like many flags, as Mia says in the comments, been hijacked by people for nefarious reasons, which is one of the reasons I like flags, because they're not taking it from me, right? They're not having it. It's mine too. I am famous for, or not so famous for, trips around Durham Miners Gala with a massive Union Jack Union flag hanging around myself, because there had been far-right rumours spread the year before that the Durham Miners Association wouldn't allow the British flag to be in the miners in the miners gala, which is obviously bullshit, and I proved that it was bullshit. And I enjoyed that. There we go.
I love it. Bit of flag education for the people.
Absolutely. Yeah, you will definitely come away from this show educated. Right then, I think you will all agree that Dan did an absolutely fantastic job at the first part of the show. Well done. Like an old pro. And John is in the comments, and he watched you and he approves. So that's the best possible approval you can have. I'm just going to flick through some comments, and we're going to have a bit of a prattle on, because it's the internet, and we could literally just talk as long as we want, actually, because we're not constrained by the things that the mainstream media are constrained by.
Can I plug something flag related?
Flag related? What? Go for it. Yes.
We have on our Socialist Think Tank shop, we have a Socialist Think Tank banner, which is a bit like a flag. So we've got like lots of Socialist Think Tank t-shirts and stuff and hoodies. But also we've got, for St. Patrick's Day coming up, we have our special Irish Independence one with a starry plough on it. So, you know, starry plough, the flag of the United Socialist Island. And we've also got one with a Palestine flag on, I think, solidarity with the Palestinian people. And we've also got an LGBTQ plus flag one as well. So if you are more of a flag guy or girl or non-binary person, you can get yourself a nice t-shirt with a flag on it.
Awesome. Well, we'll go back to the gladiators instead of wars idea, right? I think there's merit in that. Let's go back to gladiator, like with the singlets, you know, and the travelators. That would make the whole thing a lot more palatable, wouldn't it? Neil said, "Send jet, not jets." And do you know that Jet is a fantastic supporter of left-wing politics?
She is, yeah.
Yeah.
You're muted, Dan.
She supports.
Jet as in Gladiator Jet.
Yeah, the real one.
Oh.
Yeah.
She supported Jessie Jo Jacobs' campaign, didn't she?
She did support Jessie Jo Jacobs' campaign. She
Wow.
did come up and do a video with her about saving the blast furnace. That sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah. Unfortunately, no, because the Tories want to obliterate all signs of our heritage, because that's what they do, isn't it? These things remind you of a time when things were actually a bit better, when people had trade unions that worked and people could afford to live on one salary in the household. So let's get rid of them so that we can pretend that it never happened, and you can all go and bugger off at work at Amazon. That's the economic plan, isn't it? Gosh.
I like did their manifesto say, remember when you had jobs? Explosions.
Yes. Remember when you had jobs? Stop it.
Look, we've had a Twitch comment, the first one of the night, somewhere, Wayne the Great Big Foot saying I have some secret police. I think that's a reference to maybe socialists being the Soviet Union. I like it when when funny things happen on Twitch, when people just like either mess with us or I like it. It's funny.
Just for the record, I am not a Fed.
Good.
Just I'm not a Fed.
That's exactly what a Fed would say.
Yeah. But I'm not a Fed.
Yeah, he would have already slept with all of us by now, and like, you know, 3 kids with us. You know, those awful things that undercover feds do.
Spicy, bro. Spicy.
I wish it
Spicy.
wasn't true.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, right. What else do we have? Heather Wood was with us. I don't know if she's still with us, but she was with us, and I love Heather so much. And any time she throws me a bit of appreciation, my heart fills up, because if I can be appreciated by Heather Wood, I'm definitely doing the right thing in life. But she said, there's so many places in our world where atrocities are happening. The powers that be in this world are not content with killing the planet, they want to kill everything on it. And then she followed that up with a comment that says capitalism kills. I mean, gosh, isn't it just the case that we just can't, we've got to that tipping point where we can't keep, like, where the ever growing consumption of stuff is just damaging our happiness and ability to live our lives. And you could argue that it's been happening for a long time. But yeah, going back to that thing about, you know, not being able to, like, afford to live on 2 wages coming in for 40+ hour a week jobs. It's just unbelievable. Jane, you are nodding.
Yeah, I am. I lived within a 20-minute commute of London, not because I needed to be in London, but just because that's where my husband's family all lived, for quite a lot of years, until about 5 years ago. And I just remember how soul destroying that was then, like with 2 of us working full time, you know, and I had an office job, so I wasn't on minimum wage. And we could barely afford to live, and it just got, in the end, we left because, like, with 2 of us bringing in a full-time wage, we couldn't afford to rent a bed sit. And I just didn't sleep all the time for about 10 years, because I was just counting down how many years before we were on the streets. Like, we can't hold it off much longer. And it's just so sad. It's been coming a long time, and I think it's like it everywhere. I think every place in the country is just a slightly different place on the ladder. I see it happening where we are now. We're just a bit further behind because we're a little bit further from London. So the cost of living is rising steeply. And obviously this year is just horrendous. Just the universal credit cut for, you know, people already struggling to make ends meet, having to rely on that. The national insurance hike has come in. The utility increases, and it's choices, isn't it? We all know it's choices. I was reading about EDF, you know, how in France the French government's putting a windfall tax on them, so the French people are going to get a 4% price increase, and we're having the full 54% whack because we can afford it, obviously. So it's just soul destroying, and I know what it did to me and my husband when we were living like that, and it just makes me so sad to know how many other people are going to be going through that now. It's just wrong, and there's no need for it.
I've just noticed something, actually. Sorry, Samantha. Can I come in after you? But please go.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, people who know me and people who are, like, on my social media will be very aware how over the last sort of year or so I've, like, popped and I've come alive, and I'm suddenly a lot happier, and I look better. I've started doing my hair. I wear clothes that I want to wear. I spend money on things that I want, because I'm no longer living in hand-to-mouth abject poverty. That's what it is, you know, and it's given me the dignity. I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I've got the basic means to maintain my own dignity. And to do things like get a gym membership, buy healthy food, which is actually quite expensive, get my hair cut, buy some hair straighteners, get a dress with rainbows on, you know. It's amazing. And somebody said that to me in a meeting the other day, you know, there is no dignity in poverty, and if you keep people down like that, they just can't expend the energy to imagine how things could be better. because actually imagining that and thinking about that is painful. And it's difficult. So it's so important. Jackie's saying in the comments, where are the protests about the energy hike and the cost of living hike? Are we going to see people finally switch on and realize that if they don't stand up and do something about the way this country's run, it's going to continue and things are just going to get worse? I don't know. Go on, Paul.
Just on the cost of living crisis, I did a speech at the People's Assembly last week in Middlesbrough. If anyone wants to share that about some people, I was told that some people who didn't understand the whole thing understood it better after watching it, so maybe it'll be helpful for people to see. But what I was going to say is I've realised that this show hasn't really been about Saudi Arabia. It hasn't really been about anything. It's been about propaganda, and it's been about that weird situation that the world finds itself in, where we know there's this reality going on. We see what reality is for people, but we're told we're wrong all the time. We're being told there's a narrative around it. Like, so I've been thinking a lot about centrism lately. Centrism is a really, really weird concept in which, like, if you say you're a centrist, everyone goes, oh, what's sensible, isn't it? You know, you're between two ideologies. I've never met a centrist who is between any ideologies. They are the most ideologically pure people. They don't believe in anything, but apart from like the one or two things they do believe in, which is don't change anything. It used to be being called conservative, actually, if you didn't want to change anything. But no, the status quo is good. Let's keep it there. Let's keep this neoliberal economy that keeps billionaires getting richer. No, don't mess with that. That's fine. Everything's fine in that regard. What a massive, like, head trip that is for like to say, oh, everyone knows there's something wrong, but the people who are the sensible ones, who think that war is a really good idea and, like, you know, it's sensible to do a genocide, are the centrists, and they're the sensible ones. It's like this massive, just, it messes with my head. It really, really annoys me when I know, like, sensible people I speak to actually know this is true, but everyone accepts it because of the labels that are given. And again, I spoke to another person this week who was saying, what's wrong with centrism, though? And because it sounds sensible to me. And I was like, well, yeah, it's compromise. It sounds like a compromise between two ideologies, but it has become its own thing. It's become its own beast. And we need to really challenge these narratives, because we're getting these absurd truths that aren't true at all shoved down our throat about, like, you know, like Corbyn was really pro-Putin despite the fact he was the most consistently anti-Putin politician over the past 20 years. And, you know, while we were rolling out the red carpet in Britain and having him ride around with the Queen in a thing, the Corbyn was saying about how he should never have had that because of what he did in Chechnya, for example. But that doesn't matter because it's not what we're told. Sorry, just again, I've gone on a little rant there, but oh, my mind hurts.
It's okay. We're free from the constraints of mainstream media, but we will not go on for another 3 hours. Don't worry about that. But we could if we wanted to. That's the joy of the platform. Stuart, you look deep in thought, as usual, as is your USP. Do you want to unburden yourself?
Just on Paul's point, you know, yeah, people think, you know, centrism is a good idea, but the middle of something isn't, you know, applicable to all things that you come across in life. So if you had the choice to kill a cow or not kill a cow, you know, the halfway point in that, the centrist point in that is to half kill a cow. That's not a practical, you know, thing. So apply that to many of the nuanced and difficult situations that you would come across as a government, as a political party, as whatever. You know, you can't. There's not always a middle ground to be had in a contested arena, and if we live in a purely centralized, you know, society where we're always aiming for that middle ground, that's you know, almost a simulation of reality, isn't it? That's a simulacrum, where, you know, the being of itself, there's no substance to it. You know, if you're just aiming to go down the middle, it's lost itself somewhere along the lines. There's not always a middle.
Yeah, I suppose you could chop bits off the cow.
Exactly, but is that, you
Not
know?
that I would do that.
an
Like, I'm a
answer?
vegan, everyone. I don't
Yeah.
do awful things to cows.
Well,
No, Paul in the comments says that what we've become so obsessed with compromise, and that's something that speaks to me. You know, I was totally disengaged with politics for a very long time because it was consistently fighting over the centre ground, to the point where you kind of, all of the policies could have been interchangeable between the Conservatives and the Labour Party, and that didn't, you then feel very disempowered as a voter because you don't feel that your vote makes a difference. And when we come to talking about compromise, you know, I think compromise should be something that happens at the end, not at the beginning. And so I mean, you know, for example, in my role as a councillor, it's my job to advocate for Shildon and Dean Valley 100% and unwaveringly until the point where, you know, we've got to make an agreement of some kind. At the moment, I'm being asked to support a proposal to put in a bid to have the new Great British Railways sited in Durham. Well, I mean, how do you even get to Durham from Shildon? It's just a total non-starter. You know, I wasn't involved in that. If it's a discussion you're not involved with, by the way, you're not. It's not a compromise, is it? It's something that's been imposed on you. So I totally agree. I think, and just from the case that, you know, we've got to give people something to engage with when it comes to politics. I understand that some people think that what the voters want is what are the words, Stuart? People who are competent and normal.
Yeah.
Subtext, boring as hell. Like, and I don't think that's what people want, actually. But you can have political ideas, but also look competent and look like a grown up, right? I mean, surely. So yeah, it's difficult. Paul says if you're going to compromise, do it from a position of strength. Yes, ideally, that would be nice. What else do we have? Neil said Johnson makes Mayor Quimby look like a legitimate and decent politician. You could say makes him look normal and competent. Oh dear. Oh, Julie's brought in the thing about the Downing Street press room refurbishment. Now, I haven't fact checked this, but it's been circulated quite a lot. So that apparently the new Downing Street press room that cost £2 million was carried out with a firm with Russian connections. Well.
Yeah, but then you think about when they were going to have a new nuclear power station built at Hinkley Point. It was France in collaboration with China when we were very close to China, and now the rhetoric is all that China's evil now, and we can't have them having anything to do with it. They were going to put a nuclear power station on the country, like they were going to do something that could have had a meltdown here. If you don't trust them now, what changed? Nothing really changed, did it? Nothing particularly changed. I don't know whether this is just a shift in enemy, or whether I really don't know what's going on there. But like, you know, I'm not really for putting that kind of power in anyone's hands. But
I'm really interested. You know, see what you just said there, Paul. Right? I'm really interested when I have grandkids. What's going to be in their history books when they learn about now? Like, because we're at that point in capitalism where nothing makes sense. Because listen to what you just said, it doesn't really make sense. At the same time, we sold off our steel to China. Do you know what I mean? We spent the last 4 or 6 years defending Corbyn against those accusations and us about being trots or links with Russia and all of that stuff, and us all being Russian bots that work for Corbyn. It was just ludicrous. They paid for a frigging a house in Scotland for people to sit in and monitor everything about Corbyn for like what 2-3 years or something. It's absolutely crazy that we're at this point of stupidity in capitalism that nothing makes sense. How worse can it get? Like, I get like physically, but I mean in terms of like how long till people, and I think before, I forget who it was in the comments, someone said we'll when are people going to protest and all of that? Obviously, People's Assembly are doing their protests, which are fantastic, and I think open to wider than just like, you know, the Labour left. It's the wider left. But when is it going to get to the point? The last time I remember people kicking off in the UK was 2010 London riots, which spread across the UK, and that was young people kicking off. We slightly got close to it with even younger people with the environmental protests and a bit around XR, but they weren't there to actually get into trouble or actually disrupt anything really, because they had been in touch with the police and said to them, look, we're going to be between here and here, but on these days. So it was pretty coordinated. When are we actually going to see people throw their desks up in the air and say, I've had enough? When are we going to see people just drive their car into the petrol garage and say, fuck the fuel companies? When are we going to see people actually drop their tools? Not trade unionists, everyone drop their tools and say, it's done. Because like, I'm ready, but I work in a left organization, so it's easy for me to do that. But when are we going to get to that point? Because it takes more than just organizing in the workplace. This is like a massive issue that everyone's going to get done over. But how done over are they going to get done before they do over the system? That's my big question.
It's a perfect storm though, isn't it? Like with regards to it, even in unions at the minute, like I know a lot of unions now are filled with quite stuffy people at the top end who've actually thrived in this system. The ones who are sensible and look good in a suit, and they're oh no, don't rock the boat, that kind of thing. Those people are in the way. People who don't want to rock the boat are massively in the way. Sorry, I came in there and Stuart had his hand up nice and patiently, and I was rude.
No, you weren't rude. That's why I put my hand up, because I know that there's always something bubbling under the surface on everyone. There is a clock on this one. There is a point where people won't be able to afford to go to work. There is there's a countdown clock, and clearly this is why Johnson and they're going and trying to stabilize fuel prices, because people can still get to work at the moment. People aren't going to struggle to feed their families as much as they would if this continues at this rate. There's a very clear point where it's no return for his government, isn't it? When it gets to the point where, say, teachers and nurses say, look, literally, I've got no money in the bank to put fuel in the car to drive to work. That's it. I'm done. I can't go nowhere. I can't buy a ticket on the train. I can't get the bus that doesn't turn up. That's the point where this country shuts down.
That's the thing, and let's not forget, because of capitalism, because we've basically privatized education, right, and pushed the academies and schools have got bigger and bigger and bigger and served larger and larger areas. And teachers, because they've been absolutely worked to the bone, are afraid to work too close to where they live, actually. So most teachers work sort of half an hour to an hour away from where they live, so they can have some freedom and anonymity when they're not at work. And hospitals, we've closed down loads of hospitals. So, like, if you want to get anything done in County Durham, you probably have to go to Durham or Darlington, right? And because the the transport system, the public transport is all run by private companies too, right? I've heard horrendous stories about the bus depot in Darlington. Not only are they suffering from lack of staff because of all the things that happen with HGV drivers and people choosing to work for Asda delivering food rather than working on a bus because it's less stress, right? And HGV drivers getting a pay increase because all the people who were from Europe have gone home to Europe and all that stuff. So they've got no staff because of that. And they've got no staff because of COVID and people getting COVID and having to be off. And then they've got no parts for their vehicles because of all of the havoc getting things in and out of the country because of Brexit mess and post-COVID economic mess. So they're having to take parts out of buses to put in other buses and try. It's just absolute chaos there. And I mean, in my town, so we have like a bus that goes through kind of every half an hour to get to other major towns, and I've heard of people who've stood at the bus stop and there's been 2 or 3 buses that just haven't turned up, and that's like somebody's whole morning, you know. And unfortunately, because of capitalism and them being like such poor trade union representation in workplaces as well, you know, it means that could be the end of somebody's job. Full stop. One day off, you're gone. You know, I was talking to somebody in the pub. The other day, and he said he was really sad because his girlfriend's mum had just died, but he had to work 7 days a week because he'd just been taken on by a major white goods shop, and they said if he doesn't come to work, he'll get the sack. Full stop. That's the world we're living in, you know, and it's really, really desperate. I was talking to Unite the Union about some of the discussions they've been having about trying to get people home safely on a night shift, and saying, you know, can we do things with licensing of pubs, for example, and say, you know, if you're not going to put the effort into getting your staff home safely after a night shift, then maybe you shouldn't be trading in our town centres. And I said, that's great, but the first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about that is the Amazon warehouses. We've had about 3 Amazon warehouses pop up in the northeast recently, and they obviously work like 24 hours a day. And these workers obviously have no union representation because there's no unions in Amazon, right? Amazon said because they look after their staff so well, they don't need unions, right? But they've got staff organising informal lift share arrangements via Facebook with absolutely no safeguards in place, right? This is if you run a taxi, you've got to get a taxi license for good reason. You know, taxi drivers have historically killed women, and there's absolutely nothing stopping somebody from getting in one of these lift sharing groups with the intention of abusing men or women or people of any gender, you know. And that's something that we should all be worried about for these workers. Anyway, I have now gone on a rant, but since I am on a roll and it's time for us to wind up, I will say once again, thanks very much to Dan for coming along and guest hosting us today. You've been fantastic.
What's the thing we do? Hey, come on. There we go. The love hearts and that.
Thanks, Jane, Stuart, and Paul for joining us today. And remember that we are on Facebook and on Twitch and on there's a Twitter channel, but it's not broadcast there. We're on YouTube. Look us up and on your favorite podcast app, and we're on Dan's TikTok also. So you can find our content in all of those fantastic, lovely places. Brilliant. Literally whatever platform you're on, just Google search for socialist think tank, and we may well pop up in the most unsurprising places. You can also join socialist think tank for a glorious £0 and 0 pence, because we're in it for the love and not the money. But you can give us money
And the data.
the data. I donate to socialist think tank because I like doing that. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. All right then. It is time to go. Bye everybody.
Big love, everyone. Thanks for having me, guys.
Pleasure. And just while I find the next little thing, and yeah, that's it now.
Keep the red flag flying.